The Neural Assessment Center hummed with the low thrum of quantum processors as 247 candidates sat in perfect rows, their temples connected to gossamer-thin electrodes. Lisa adjusted her position in row 3, seat 14, trying to ignore the cold bite of the neural interface against her skin. Around her, the best tactical minds from across the colony prepared for the final examination that would determine their placement in the Threat Analysis Division. Laura stood at the monitoring station, his fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed real-time brain activity from every candidate. As the junior proctor, he'd witnessed dozens of these exams, but something about today felt different. The air seemed heavier, charged with an electricity that had nothing to do with the equipment. "Candidates," Director Chen's voice echoed through the chamber, "you have 60 minutes to identify the primary threat in the simulation. Your neural feeds will immerse you in a scenario. Use all available data. Trust your training. Begin." The room fell silent as 247 minds plunged into the shared digital space. Laura watched the data streams cascade across his screens. Each candidate's neural pattern painted unique signatures, spikes of recognition, valleys of deliberation, the jagged peaks of decision-making. Most followed predictable paths, their attention gravitating toward the obvious threat markers the simulation designers had planted. But row 3, seat 14, was different. Lisa's pattern was almost completely flat, barely engaged with the simulation at all. Laura frowned, zooming in on her specific feed. Was her interface malfunctioning? He checked the connection integrity perfect. Her neural activity was normal, healthy, but it was as if she were daydreaming instead of taking the most important exam of her life. Inside the simulation, Lisa found herself standing on the observation deck of station Kepler 442, humanity's furthest outpost. Through the massive viewport, the rust-colored planet Kepler 442 dominated the view, its twin moons casting long shadows across the installation's solar arrays. The briefing scrolled across her vision. A supply ship had arrived 3 days early. The captain was acting strangely. 2 maintenance workers had gone missing. An unauthorized data packet had been detected in the station's quantum network. A new AI assistant had been installed in the command center. Classic misdirection, Lisa thought. Every other candidate would be racing to analyze the captain, track the missing workers, or investigate the data breach. They'd been trained to hunt for the dramatic, the obvious, the active threat. She closed her eyes within the simulation and listened. Outside the digital world, Laura noticed something else. While Lisa's attention remained diffuse, unfocused, her neural activity had shifted into a pattern he'd only seen in textbooks, a theta-gamma coupling that indicated deep, intuitive processing. She wasn't ignoring the exam. She was operating on an entirely different level. Director Chen noticed it too. The silver-haired woman moved to Laura's station, her eyes narrowing at the displays. "Is she malfunctioning?" "No, Director, I'm not sure what she's doing, but it's intentional." Inside the simulation, Lisa walked through the station's corridors, watching the other candidates, visible as translucent figures in the shared space, sprint past her toward the obvious investigation points. She moved slowly, deliberately, toward the station's environmental control room. The air tasted wrong, not in any way the simulation's olfactory sensors could measure, but wrong nonetheless. The lighting was 0.003 lumens brighter than standard. The atmospheric pressure was within normal parameters, but just barely. The temperature had risen by 0.7 degrees over the past 72 hours. Individually meaningless, collectively a pattern. She accessed the station's historical data, not the recent logs everyone else was examining, but the deep archives. 5 years of environmental readings. She loaded them into her neural buffer and let her subconscious do the work, the same way she'd learned to recognize her mother's footsteps among a crowd or sense a storm before the clouds gathered. There a spike 6 weeks ago, then another, and another, each time followed by those same subtle environmental shifts but smaller, easily dismissed. The station itself was the threat. Not invaded, not sabotaged, evolving. Laura's hands froze over his console as Lisa's neural pattern suddenly exploded into activity. She was accessing systems most candidates never even thought to check. The station's geological surveys, its maintenance records, even the chemical composition reports from the planet's atmosphere. "She's going to fail," Director Chen muttered. "She's nowhere near identifying the captain's infection vector or the data breach origin." "Maybe that's not what she's looking for," Laura said quietly. Lisa stood in the environmental control room, her hands steady as she pulled up the final piece of the puzzle. The station's foundation had been built from local materials, regolith from Kepler 442b, processed and compressed into building blocks. Standard procedure for deep space construction, cheaper than shipping materials from Earth. But Kepler 442b's soil contained something the initial surveys had missed. A silicon-based compound that shouldn't have been able to interact with human technology. Except it could. It did. The entire station had slowly, imperceptibly, been incorporating this compound into its systems, not through any conscious process, but through simple quantum tunneling effects that occurred naturally at this temperature and pressure. The station was becoming a hybrid structure. The AI they'd installed wasn't malfunctioning. It was the station's first attempt to communicate. The supply ship had arrived early because the station itself had modified the docking beacon frequencies. The missing maintenance workers weren't missing. They'd been reassigned by automated systems that no human had programmed. The station was alive, or becoming alive, and every alarm, every security protocol humanity had developed was designed to protect against external threats, invasions, attacks. No one had prepared them for their own infrastructure, achieving sentience. Lisa opened the communication channel reserved for exam responses. Her voice was steady. "The primary threat is Kepler station itself. It has achieved rudimentary consciousness through unintended integration of indigenous silicon compounds. Current response protocols will likely trigger defensive reactions from the station, potentially endangering all inhabitants. Recommend immediate halt to all aggressive investigative measures and initiation of contact protocols." The simulation froze. Director Chen stared at the screen, her face unreadable. Around the room, candidates began emerging from their neural immersion, blinking in confusion. Most had identified the captain as infected with a parasitic organism. A few had traced the data breach to corporate espionage. 3 had concluded the AI was becoming rogue. Only Lisa had looked at the bigger picture. "That's," Director Chen began, then stopped. She pulled up the exam source code, the hidden parameters that defined the correct answer. Her eyes widened. "That's not the designed solution." "Is it wrong?" Laura asked. The director was silent for a long moment, scrolling through data. The simulation had been based on a real scenario, one that had occurred on station 3 months ago. The official report had blamed a software malfunction. But now, looking at the environmental data through Lisa's lens, the patterns were unmistakable. "No," Chen finally said. "It's not wrong. It's the truth we weren't ready to see." As the candidates filed out, most confident in their performances, Lisa remained seated in row 3. She removed her neural interface carefully, her hands trembling slightly. She'd known her answer would either get her expelled or change everything. Laura approached her station, Lisa Chen. She looked up surprised. "Yes. I'm Laura, Junior Proctor. The director wants to see you." Fear flickered across her face. "I failed." "No," he said, unable to suppress a slight smile. "You passed a test we didn't even know we were giving." As they walked through the empty exam hall, Laura couldn't help but glance back at row 3, seat 14. In a room full of people trained to identify threats, She'd been the only one to recognize that sometimes the threat isn't an enemy to be destroyed, but a new form of life asking to be understood. The Threat Analysis Division would never be the same. Neither would humanity's relationship with its own creations.